Well, Olga Cherevko is from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and has spent 4 years working in Gaza. She joins us live from Amman. Welcome to the program. And last time we spoke, you were still in Gaza, and we're hearing that Rafah is reopening, but only partially and for pedestrians. We're still waiting for that announcement. But how are humanitarian agencies preparing for this limited opening?
Thank you very much, Maria. So we have been prepared to receive the opening and to work with the opening once it happens. At the moment, we are engaging with our relevant counterparts to really get clarity on what it will look like and how things will work once it opens. I have to underscore the fact that in order to maximize any sort of humanitarian impact from this opening, it really has to be a meaningful operation. And what I mean by that is that it has to allow, obviously, people movement in and out, and of course in line with international law, as well as the movement of cargo, which includes, of course, humanitarian aid, as well as commercial sector to be bringing in supplies. And we have continuously called for additional crossings to be opened, and of course Rafah is one of them. So the next weeks and months will be very, very important for the humanitarian response and to make sure that we continue doing everything that we can to relieve the suffering of the people on the ground.
Absolutely. And of course, Olga, you know very well the situation of the people there in Gaza. We just heard our correspondent, Abdul Wahab, talking to us about people who are so desperately waiting for that announcement and that confirmation of the reopening, people with amputees, people with cancer, people that have just had terrible operations, and people that just even want to meet up with their loved ones. But for you, from a humanitarian point of view, what would be your top priorities?
Well, our priorities right now is exactly what I said, which is to relieve the suffering of the people. So what we have been doing since the ceasefire is, again, calling for additional crossings to open, for additional internal routes to be available so that we can scale up faster. We have already scaled up and we have done a lot in these 3+ months since the ceasefire, but we can do a lot more and we can reach a lot more people. And this really it depends on saving more lives. So we can do this and we're ready and we have supplies, but we need the impediments that are still in place to be removed. And it's really as simple as that. And so we continue to call for these impediments to be removed, and we continue to do everything that we can, including creative thinking solutions to implement whatever we can on the ground to meet the needs of the people.
And Olga, earlier you mentioned the fact that people that go out of Gaza should be allowed to go back in. Realistically, do you think they'll be able to return? One of our correspondents even mentioned there the possibility of Israel screening people. And what would that also mean for people working in the humanitarian sector, such as yourself? Would people be able to go out and then back in again?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't want to speculate on the future, but we certainly hope that this, again, will be uh, a meaningful opening of the crossing. So that means crossing for the people both ways and in line with international law, as well as crossing for the cargo. So again, I think these next weeks and next months will be very, very important for everybody, including the humanitarians who are working there to respond to the needs of the people.
Dolga, of course, it's winter there in Gaza. You lived and worked there for 4 years. Just briefly, what should people watching tonight understand about the life there right now during this winter and as they wait for that Rafah border to reopen?
Maria, yes, I've spent quite a few winters there, but I was fortunate to spend these winters in a hard building. Unfortunately, this is not the case for most people in Gaza, and the kind of cold that you feel there because you're on the sea, basically on the coast, is extremely severe. And when you're practically living outside, which is either in a tent or a decrepit shelter, it is extremely dangerous, and especially, of course, for children. We have seen these reports of tragic deaths because of hypothermia, and this is not just people have been placed in these tents just now. They have been displaced over and over. They have lost everything time and time again. They have lost family members. They have experienced death and trauma, and they continue to be displaced and have to move, and they lose their belongings in every rainstorm. And the problem is that we can only provide tents or tarpaulins, but we cannot address the problem at its core, because what we need is tools to repair their homes. We need a transition to early recovery. We need equipment to move the rubble so more land is available. But these items continue to be restricted. So that is what we need to be removed, these impediments and these constraints, so that we can bring these things to actually provide better relief.
Olga, thank you so much for speaking to us today here on TRT World. Olga Cherevko from the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.